If you're a Dungeons & Dragons fan and have played thousands of hours of Baldur's Gate 3 and are looking for a new D&D fix, then Solasta 2 might be your solution. The game just went into early access, and having played about 12 hours worth of it, I can say it looks promising and has potential. If you'd like to see some gameplay, then check out the link in the description. You can watch my live streams of it as we tested it all out. But I do need to say that this is not going to be up to the production levels of Baldur's Gate 3. This is going to be a little bit more in line with the first Solasta game, but the developers appear to have listened to the criticisms from that, increased their budget and made improvements, which we'll talk about in the video. Should also point out that this being in early access, then there is a lot still to be worked, fixed and changed and added to, and the game is unlikely to release for quite a while yet. There's a lot of work to be done, a lot of things to be added in. So in keeping of the style of the first game, which was Solasta Crown of the Magister, which I quite enjoyed, Solasta 2 continues the same gameplay style. You've got real-time exploration and movement, followed by turn-based combat, using, of course, D&D 5th edition rules, or a very close representation of them. As usual, most rules for D&D don't fit perfectly into video games, and I believe there's some adaptation done here. But to me, it seems pretty faithful to the rule set. There's also a new way of moving around the world map, where you basically expend movement points to explore new areas on a hex-based map, with random events popping up all over the place. Some of the events are fixed in place and will wait for you to go and explore them to encounter them, whereas others are on a timer and will disappear in the time it takes to have a couple of long rests. There's also the chance for just a random, unexpected event to pop up when you enter a new hex on the map. This seems like quite a cool way to explore the world, though I'm not 100% sure I'm sold on it and it's necessarily an improvement, but it seems absolutely fine. And I have noticed that the random events that pop up, you don't need to worry too much if you miss them, because they're all much of a muchness and more will pop up, so don't really spend time going out of your way just to get those random events. But they are little cool additions, and if one pops up on your way from A to B, then it's well worth exploring for the potential of some rewards, some loot, or some more experience. And speaking of experience, I should mention that at the moment only the first chapter of the game is available to play, and there's a level cap of level 4 on your characters. Well, this will be extended as new chapters become available through early access. And of course, being an early access game, I should point out, don't go rushing in to buy it necessarily, because whilst I'm fairly certain the developers will finish it, there's never any guarantee of that with an early access game. And I find that games like this, whilst they're nice to try, they're a lot more fun to play once it's fully complete, when bugs have been eliminated or at least reduced, and you can enjoy the story in one fluid play session without having to break it up and wait for more chapters to be released as the game goes along. Just my experience, my advice, so take that as you will, but feel free to play it or buy it or do whatever you want. Now, the story, from what I can tell, opens a little differently to many D&D games, where instead of just being a random group of adventurers who turn up at the tavern one night and meet each other, as if you've played tabletop D&D, you'll be very familiar with a lot of openings from your games master like that. In this case, all the characters, and you'll play a party of 4 and you'll get to create them all, they're all from the same family, so they all have prior existing relationships between each other. And there's a 5th family member in-game that seems to cause a little bit of a problem, has a falling out with the god of life and death, which casts you all into a terrible situation that you have to go and resolve. At least that's about what I can tell from the story, and of course this might alter and be tweaked as the game goes through development. But so far, it's setting you off on a big epic quest to maybe save the world, and it throws you into a new part of the world to explore. So I don't think this directly follows on from the first game, but that's fine. D&D adventures generally don't need to. However, having said that, we need to see how it plays out, because I don't know where the story goes, and I might be completely wrong about all that. Now, as mentioned, you do get to create all 4 characters that will make up your party, and it seems to follow regular character creation 5th edition rules. So you can choose from a variety of races and classes, not all of which are in the game yet, and if it follows the same direction as the first game, some classes are going to be added in DLC perhaps, and I wasn't overly keen on that concept of selling DLC for that reason, but we'll have to see how this develops. And at the moment there's a choice of some D&D classes to play, not all of them by any means, but those that are there are fun and are quite capable of making up a balanced party. Now, following the current edition of D&D rules, you do get to create all the backgrounds, and that affects the starting feats and stats of the characters. Oh, by the way, the stats are point spend, not random dice rolled, which I don't know. It's a fair and balanced way of making a character, but I always like the fun and the chance of those random dice rolls where you roll 3d6 and that's going to be your stat score, or maybe 4d6 and remove the lowest number, depending on the choices you like to make. We'll have to see if that stays in place for the finished version, but I mean, it's fine, and it's a good way of providing a balanced game, I guess, by spending points to pick your stats. However, there's no special racial abilities here. Those have pretty much been wiped out in 5th edition, and there's been a lot of people complaining that you can have halfling females now as strong as human or dwarf barbarians or whatever, and it doesn't make any difference to me. I think it opens up more classes that you can play as you want. However, I'm a bit of an old school one, so I still like making my classes and characters pretty much as they felt like from the older versions of D&D. However, the choice is there for everyone, so it's not worth getting too upset over. I will say that the facial models during character creation are so far not impressing me too much at all, but we'll give the developers a chance to finish the game and get everything put in. Some of these might just be placeholders. Anyway, playing the game feels like many other D&D adventure type games. You load into a zone, and you get a top-down view, and you run around it, interacting with the people there, picking up quests, talking to traders, buying, selling items. And it's basically just click on the map to move around. Although the game does have direct movement controls at all. You can switch into this mode by pressing Shift, and then you can move the character you've got selected with WASD. To me, that feels a little bit unusual in this type of game, and I keep triggering the Shift button by mistake and switching into this, as I've played other games where you hold Shift to move the map around quickly. So yeah, just one of my bad habits. I can't see how the direct control really helps things in this, but it's there as an option, so I guess if you want it, great. Doesn't really do it for me though, and I'm happy just to click on the map, which sets the movement command for either the individual character or the party as a whole. You can switch between those modes. And you will need to solve some of the puzzles in the game. Yes, we do have a few puzzles in here. I always kind of like that in these sort of D&D games. So you've picked up some quests, you're sent off into the wild to go and resolve them or look for someone or whatever you're trying to do. Of course, the mainstay of the game is the turn-based combat. And from what I can tell, it does fairly closely follow 5th edition rules, and I like that. Characters go in initiative order, as do the enemies, of course, so you might find sometimes the enemies are going before you if they've got better initiative rolls. You can set up ambushes by going into stealth and opening the combat. I'm not 100% sure this is working as intended at the moment, the game being in early access still, so we'll have to see how that really comes out on release. But the design is in there and the option is in there to open from stealth with ambushes, so I'm pretty sure they'll have that working properly. But otherwise, and for those who are not familiar about it, when it's your character's turn, you've got the actions like a move action and then a secondary action, which will usually be an attack or casting a spell. And you've got bonus actions, which depending on your class can be several different things. And of course, rogues being particularly adept at using bonus actions to get an extra dash in there, which is a double move. So with a system like this, you will of course have highs and lows. You've got a really great chance to hit the enemy, but your dice roll is bad and it misses. And of course, the same can happen vice versa. So you got to take the rough with the smooth. Healing is done either by casting magic spells, of which you've got limited spell slots between rests. You can also do a short rest and recover a few hit points that way. Or there's the long rest, which requires having some food in the party as rations, and you get all your health and all your spells back doing that. It does make combat a bit of a management system where you don't want to just go blasting off all your spells and special abilities against the first encounter you come across, just in case you can't rest and get them back before the next encounter. Although, with the current system and rule set, it's usually absolutely fine and possible to do that, but there are some combat sections of the game that I came across where you definitely just have to manage your party's resources a bit more carefully. All in all, if you're used to D&D games, then this feels exactly the same and plays out the same, so thumbs up there. Now at the moment I'd say the game is in too early a stage of development to give you a real good idea on what the quality of the questing is like, but so far it feels fine. It's a typical sort of go off and look for this person who's got lost in the hills and is important to the main story, or go and find these things out in the wild and bring them back to me. Feels like any D&D set of missions and adventures that you might have played on tabletop with one of your mates being the DM. Now, economy-wise, it follows a model brought in, I think, with some of the DLC in the first game, is that there are different factions within the game, and to buy the nicer, juicier items of them, you're going to have to do quests and gain reputation with one or more particular factions. Now, it might turn out that we need to grind quests for all of the factions to get the relevant reputation with them, to buy the nice items, or we may just decide how to finish certain quests, whether it might upset one faction or another. We have to see how that plays out. But so far, I didn't see anything particularly exciting to buy, but we are in the early stage of the game, of course, with low-level characters and presumably low-level items for sale in the vendors. I did find some magic items out in the game whilst exploring and fighting. We've got some +1 two-handed weapons and wonder magic missiles and some other bits and pieces. Nothing too mind-blowing just yet, but we'll have to see if the better stuff that comes later on is really cool and exciting. Because, let's face it, these D&D games are all about the loot. And generally speaking, there is plenty of loot. Have a combat encounter, you'll be able to pick up the swords and broken bits and pieces and drop gems and other rubbish and crafting materials from the enemies that you've defeated. Oh, I should mention about crafting. There's lots of crafting materials to pick up or to buy. You can find them in the game. You can scavenge them from the wilderness. At the moment, though, there's no crafting in the game, but it looks like it's clearly designed to be put in at a later stage. Now, let's talk about the graphic, sound and performance. I've already mentioned that I think the outside landscapes, and indeed the inner city and town areas, do look very nice. I don't feel like the character models currently look all that great, and the animations on them aren't that special either. But this is going to be something that we'll have to really wait until the game is finished before we judge on it. But there's definitely issues with lip syncing, but that's not the biggest crime in the world. What is a bigger crime, some of the characters' facial animations during the cutscenes and talking. Whoa, yeah, that's some dodgy stuff going on there. But as I say, early stages, early doors for development. Let's see how those progress. Sound-wise, the biggest improvement here is clearly the voice acting. There is some quality professional voice actors being added into this. Some of the stars from Baldur's Gate 3 are in here. There's at least one, possibly two, but the two big bads and villains that I've come across so far, or what seem to be the villains, sound excellent and much improved over the first game. So, sound-wise, great. Graphics, a mixed bag. Performance, well, the frame rate has been absolutely fine. I've seen one or two people complain about that, but you can see the specs for my rig down in the description. I had no issues with frame rate. I did have some odd bugs that would occur from time to time. At least I think they're bugs. I don't know if they were attached to me triggering the direct movement control. It just basically stopped me from activating items and doors and things within an area. Normally you'd mouse over a door or a chest and you get a little cog symbol. It means you can interact with it to open it or to explore it or gather from it, whatever. And occasionally that would just stop functioning. And at one point it happened just as I zoned into a city and I thought, oh, all these things they've added into the city, early access, I can't access them yet. So I played for about half an hour thinking that it was by design. And then when I realised I couldn't actually complete the quest by talking to whoever I needed to talk to, I realised it was bugged. It's quickly fixed by a save and a reload in place. You don't need to lose anything, but it's just something to be aware of, and I suspect that'll be tidied up before we go. And I did have the game hang a couple of times. It was whilst it was loading into a new area. I gave it, I think, 7 or 8 minutes to load in at one point in case it was going to recover. It didn't seem to. So that was a case of having to hard close the game and restart it. Again, it's early access. We've got to expect these things, which is why I generally recommend people don't buy games in early access. You get a much better experience, a full playthrough experience, if you wait. But if you want to go for it, be warned, you will experience and encounter problems like this. So overall, my feelings towards Solasta 2 are generally positive. The game looks like it's going to give us that nice D&D feel. It's going to follow on from where the first one left off gameplay-wise, even if not story-wise, and I liked all the gameplay from the first game. I thought it was great. The one thing that possibly worries me a little bit is that we're going to have more of these DLC or expansions, and that's going to be the way to get additional classes. I know the expansion of the first game also brought in new quest areas to go and do stuff and little mini adventures, but I didn't think they were nearly as good as the main story. And whilst they brought in new classes to play and enjoy, the way to get those classes was by buying the expansions, which added I thought, poorer quality quests and usually unfinished and slightly broken things. I don't want to see that happen here, so it'd be nice if we just had a better selection of classes by the time the game goes to release. That's something I'm going to watch out for and judge the game on. At the moment, there's no ranger class, for example, at the moment, and I'd like to see that. But there's also, I don't think, any druid or barbarian classes. I'm fairly sure they came in at some point in the first game. It's been a while since I played that, but it is worth checking out if you haven't played it already and just need a D&D fix. I do need to point out as well, though, that this is not going to be the next Baldur's Gate 3. It is not built to that budget or level, or certainly world interactivity, or if that's even a word. It's not going to be on that scale. This feels much more like a homebrew D&D adventure with your friends around a table than some big epic tale of massive production values that Baldur's Gate 3 was. That's a classic that's hardly going to be touched by anything, but then other games don't have to compete with it. They just have to provide a decent product that we can enjoy alongside it. And that's what I'm hoping Solasta 2 will become. So let me know if you're looking forward to this game. Drop something in the comments and tell me if you were a D&D character, what class and race would you be? Interesting to hear what you all pick. Alright folks, thanks for watching, and of course I'll catch you again on the next one.